Welcome to another changing conversation on SGS Live, where we're moving towards a better, safer, and more interconnected world. I'm Teddy Katz, your host. Today, we're going to examine an important and sustainable way that many are choosing to get around. E bikes and e scooters are part of a booming industry right now. While they offer a cheaper and more environmentally friendly way for people to move around, there have been some unintended consequences. We've all seen the media reports of the lithium ion batteries catching on fire, raising questions about them being a safety hazard, especially if they aren't used properly. That's led to a lot of public policy questions around how best to regulate e bikes. Before we get to our expert guest today to speak about this further, let's take a look at this video from the New York Fire Department. It shows what actually happened when an e bike store went up in flames. Thanks to the New York Fire Department for giving us permission to use the video. You can see how fast the fire spread and how difficult it is to put out. We're going to be joined by an SGS fire safety expert shortly who shares some insights. We'll also speak to an industry leader who will tell us about the popularity of these e-bikes. Before that, though, I'd like to start by introducing John Salige, who's the Vice President of Connectivity for SGS North America. Now, John knows these e-bikes better than most because SGS helps certify both the bikes and the batteries to ensure they're safe to use. John, welcome.
Hi, Teddy. It's nice to be here today.
Well, it's nice to have you. I was mentioning off the top, there have been some unintended consequences with these bikes and the batteries. What's been the main thing, John, that's gone wrong and that's led to the dangerous fires with these bikes?
Unintended consequences, yes. One of the things is you need to make sure that the bike is certified by a nationally recognized testing laboratory, an NRTL. And these NRTLs, what we do, SGS is an NRTL. We were the first actually NRTL to do e-bike certification and be accredited by OSHA for that. But what a testing inspection certification company does for electrical products is ensure that there are no operator hazards, fire hazards, or energy hazards. So when you get the bike certified, you're looking at these, we're looking at these, and this will help to prevent fires on e-bikes. Another thing that you can do that you need to pay attention to is, bikes are not new forever. So when you get into, if they've been wrecked, you need to inspect the bike to make sure that it's okay to use. And also you need to look to make sure that as you use the bike and you have to replace components, you're using what the manufacturer specifies as acceptable components, because they've been tested for use with that bike. So you have certification, you have regular maintenance and replacement of parts, and inspecting the bike. Those are keys.
And if somebody has a bike or the bike's in some kind of accident or the battery gets dented, is that a warning sign that something could go wrong?
Yes, absolutely.
And so what should people do in a case like that?
Well, you should contact your bike dealer, retailer, or somebody that can inspect the bike that's qualified to look at the bike.
If you certify the bikes, John, like SGS does, you mentioned being one of the first nationally accredited labs in North America to do this. Does that guarantee that there won't be an issue with fires if you get them certified?
Certification, again, helps against the risk, preventing the risk of fire, electric shock, or energy hazards. But these bikes are meant to be used. So it's not a foolproof case to prevent fires. Again, inspecting the bike, for damage, using it within the instructions provided by the manufacturer are key points to continue safe operation and to prevent fires.
I've also heard that there's kits available that people can turn their regular bikes into electric bikes, and sometimes those can cause problems. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there are those kits out there. We do certify. SGS does certify those kits, but a lot of them unfortunately are not certified. And basically, yeah, that kit turns a regular bike into an e-bike. And you have a lot of them are not going to meet the requirements of the standard, so you have to be very careful about looking for the certification.
Thanks, John. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about certification. But before we do that, let's look at who's joined us today. And I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll see if we can get to as many as possible near the end of our program. Let's just see if we have any comments. So far, no comments, but we'll come back to your questions, as I say, at the end of our presentation today. Now let's turn to some perspective about this growing industry. I'd like to introduce Mike Fritz from Human Powered Solution. Now, they're a company that is a key member of the National Bike Dealers Association in the United States, with a pulse on everything that's going on. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Teddy. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about the growth of e-bikes and e-scooters, especially in the last few years since the pandemic.
Sure. E-bikes have been around since the mid-90s. Companies started developing electrically assisted bicycles primarily as an enhancement to the recreational aspects of riding a bicycle. Everybody, when they were a kid, a bike meant freedom. But as soon as we turned old enough to get a driver's license, the bike got stashed in the basement, and you enjoyed the benefits of driving your car around. A lot of people would like to revisit the joy and happiness associated with riding a bike. But as we get older, our ability to ride a bike diminishes, and it gets to be quite painful. So the idea here is to assist people getting back into cycling by making it somewhat easier, as their fitness levels decreased with advancing years. But we found that since the introduction of e-bikes, there's been a whole cottage industry, if you will, of new applications that take advantage of the utility that's offered by a powered electric bicycle. In terms of personal mobility, people are finding e-bikes a very great alternative to driving a car. If you've got a relatively short range commute, you can drive a car or ride a bike between your work and your home, getting to the office without being all sweaty from having to exert the effort of pedaling the bike there. And then on the way back, you can get a little exercise if you want it, or if with a recharged battery, it'll carry you back home without the effort. So, but we've also discovered a lot of practical applications in terms of delivery services. A lot of people are using e-bikes now, bicycle messengers, powered bicycle messengers. The fact that it's an e-bike allows them to go farther, faster, and achieve more revenue, if you will, during the course of the day. Food delivery services are taking advantage of the utility associated with micromobility as well. And the pandemic really gave those applications a shot in the arm. When people were reluctant to go out to eat and to intermingle with the public and whatnot, and they preferred to have meals delivered as opposed to going to a restaurant. So it's really grown into a substantial industry in terms of, as I say, the utility, the functionality, if you will, of an electric bicycle in the transportation infrastructure. You can blow by traffic, parking becomes a significantly less of a problem, and it's a whole lot cheaper in terms of acquisition cost as well as operating and maintenance costs. So there really is a very important place in our society for these magnificent machines.
Now, Mike, but just before I ask the next question, I just want to give a shout out to Niraj and to Imran, who both sent us a message. Glad that you could join us from wherever you are in the world, and hope to hear some of your questions at the end. Mike, can you just paint a picture of the demographics when it comes to the users? Are these mostly young people or a combination of people of all generations? Tell us a little bit about the demographics.
It really is a combination, a broad section of society, if you will. Initially, elderly people with some means that were vacationing in a resort that had e-bikes available to rent would rent the bikes, enhance their vacation utilizing the electric bike, and really fell in love with riding the bike. So we saw an initial surge of popularity with older riders that, again, have rediscovered the pleasures of cycling and want to do it more than just at the resort when they're on vacation. But then, as I say, we've found a thriving industry in terms of delivery services, and those people run the gamut. New York City is an excellent example, and that is part of the problem that we'll talk about later is the proliferation of electric bike messengers and delivery personnel in major urban areas really take advantage of the utility. And now we're seeing more and more younger riders getting involved. Manufacturers and distributors are now selling e-bikes in 20-inch wheel configurations with limited power, obviously, because it is a powered vehicle and you want to be safe. But it's I don't think there's a single demographic that I can think of that can't take advantage of the recreational as well as the utility aspects of electric bicycles.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to come back to you shortly when we talk about the different ways that e-bikes are currently being regulated. Before we get to there, though, I'd like to now introduce Bobby Brown. Bobby is the global head of fire technology and the director of operations at SGS. For years, he's helped run GovMark Testing, a lab SGS acquired in 2017 that, among other things,
out of focus. Yeah.
Mobility. Bobby has also been a volunteer firefighter in the New York area where he's worked for the past couple of decades. Welcome, Bobby.
Yes, thank you for having me, Teddy. Allow me just to quickly hydrate here.
There we go. Bobby,
gotta stay hydrated.
Well, yeah, you got to stay hydrated. And we saw the video off the top from the New York Fire Department. Your lab, which includes a lot of firefighters because of the type of flammability testing you do, is looking to expand soon to start testing lithium-ion batteries too. How come you're looking to do that?
Well, let's, kudos to SGS, first of all, because, they are the world's largest testing, inspection, certification company to begin with. Currently, they're doing it now in both Europe and Asia. And obviously, with all the publicity, and Mike brought that in as far as New York City goes, with a lot of the e-bike battery fires that have been going on here. And over the last, I would say about a year and a half, we've been getting a lot of questions about when are we going to be beginning to test lithium-ion batteries. So there's a lot of interest in it. We've spoken to New York City Fire Department. They would love the idea if we were to start doing testing, and we can probably do some collaboration with them as well. The fact that our location here in Farmingdale, New York, we are SGS's primary fire testing lab here. So it would make sense that we would want to do the testing here. We're very concerned about the loss of life and property damage that happens here. So we're looking to expand our scope, and hopefully in the upcoming year in 2025, we hope to have it in place.
Thanks for that, Bobby. Before I get to my next question, I just want to give a shout out to some of other guests who've provided comments from Angola, including Euclides. Andre Mora is joining us as well. Carlos from Chile, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate having you here. Now, Bobby, as a firefighter, what kind of personal experience have you had with fires with e-bikes and lithium batteries, or more generally with electric car fires? And why are they so different and a new challenge for firefighters?
Well, listen, honestly, I love 4th of July. I believe Teddy, John, Mike, you guys love 4th of July too?
Absolutely.
Well, let me tell you, if you have not ever experienced what it looks like when somebody attempts to throw water on a lithium battery fire, it is probably one of the brightest light shows you've ever seen. But also, on the other hand, the ramifications of the hydrogen gases, the toxicity, the heat release that comes off of that. For many decades, even centuries, we were also used to the traditional fires, the wood, the paper, contents in a room, things of that nature. They burn a lot slower. A whole different world now with lithium batteries, because potentially they explode. The gases, again, are harmful, if not fatal. And if you're not equipped with the right protective equipment, that being gear like I'm wearing now and breathing apparatuses, you're looking at a very dangerous situation.
What's the worst you've ever seen with this kind of fire?
Well, I've actually seen some controlled burns with batteries, trying to create a thermal runaway situation where we overcharge a battery. Again, this is a controlled environment that we're talking about here. And to see how quickly a small fire, and again, let's use that New York City Fire Department video, that was within a minute or two where the whole room was filled up with toxic gases. The fire expanded and traveled and propagated. So that should give you the impact of how quickly, how intense a lithium battery fire takes place.
Now, Bobby, stay with me. We're going to be joined once again by Mike and John. And I'd like to ask the three of you about the different ways these bikes are currently being regulated around North America, because it's a bit of a hodgepodge of different policies. John, what are some of the different ways municipalities are regulating these e-bikes?
Yeah, as you said, Teddy, it is a bit of a hodgepodge. You know, in New York City, I think is leading by example. They're saying that e-bikes need to be NRTL certified, and the batteries need to be NRTL certified as well. And the certification is important, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that does as we look at some of the other areas. But like in California, they say their laws are more geared towards what the landlord of a building can and cannot do, and they cannot restrict a person having an e-bike as long as the e-bike is tested to the UL 2849 standard or CE certified. Now, CE certified is a manufacturer's self-declaration, so that therein presents some problems. And as we in the next example we talk about in Canada, the Metrolinx, they've actually banned e-bikes on the transportation system from the month of November through April, and the reason is because they had a large fire in January. And it's okay. So it's Canada. It's cold there. There's icy conditions. They use salt and de-icing compounds and stuff like that. But in Canada, they say that the bike shall be UL certified for the UL standard UL 2849 or CE certified. Again, the CE certification comes up, and that's a manufacturer's declaration, and that presents some problems because when we test and certify to UL 2849, we're looking at the battery and the battery management system, and the battery management system is really monitors each cell in that battery pack to make sure that it's being charged and operating within its right temperature limits, voltage and current limits. And if there's any problems, it doesn't allow you to do that. So when you're on the up in the cold area, and the concern at the Metrolinx is lithium plating caused by the cold temperatures or salt compounds in the road and stuff like that, that all that stuff gets addressed during the certification process, because lithium plating is caused by the battery being charged or discharged at cold temperatures. And when you have a battery management system, you're going to prevent that from happening. It's not going to allow that to happen. And when you also certify and test this bike, we're going to look at the outdoor environment. We're going to look at the gaskets. We're going to do water testing, everything that's included for outdoor type products. And so that's also part of the certification. It's very important. And if you take all these into consideration, you will avoid, again, what we talked about earlier, those battery fires. And where you said at the very, very beginning, it's kind of a hodgepodge because everybody has different interpretations of what the requirements are or what should be done. As I mentioned, in New York City, California, and Canada as an example. And I think there will be federal regulations that are going to come about soon that will kind of lay it out for everybody here, at least in the US. But the standard that we certify to is harmonized, the US and Canada. And it will prevent these issues from happening. So I think as we all, that's the purpose of us having this discussion, is so, that, these bikes are fun. Let's get out there. Cities and states, they're putting in trails and dedicated bike lanes, and it's a great way to get out, be with your family. In Georgia, it's hot, so you want the pedal assist so you're not sweating when you get to your location, and have a lot of fun in these. But you need to make sure that you start off with a safe bike, and that's the purpose of the certification. And the cities and states and jurisdictions are trying to do that, but they're not all harmonized, and it's kind of a hodgepodge right now. So,
well, to that point, and just a small clarification before I come to you, Mike, in Canada here, the Metrolinx actually is the suburb GO train, they call it. It goes into the city, into Toronto. And in that particular case, they allow bikes to go on as long as they have a certain as long as they can show a certification number on those bikes. It's the TTC, which is the metro station, the subway in downtown Toronto, that actually bans them in the winter time. So it's very confusing for people, because you could, on the one hand, be coming into the city on a certified bike, and then you cannot take that bike onto the metro in downtown Toronto. So very complicated. And Mike, with that in mind, like, how confusing are these hodgepodge policies all over North America for the consumer to try and get their head around? You talk to regulatory bodies all the time. What's the message that you give them?
Teddy, you're exactly correct. There's so much going on. A lot of it's been amplified by the issues in New York City with the battery fires. There are also issues in California with respect to young people riding the bike. We talked about the demographic earlier. There's a lot of kids riding electric bikes now that don't necessarily have the training that's required to make sure that you know how to operate a motorized vehicle safely, and they're using them in areas where they shouldn't be used. It's just, there's a lot of issues associated with the safety of the product itself, as well as the safety of the use of the product in the hands of an operator. So in municipalities, all the way up from local cities and towns up to the federal government now are trying to deal with these issues. We have an industry trade group called People for Bikes. They've attempted to help clarify some of the restrictions and availability, if you will, of proper venues where you can use a bike by setting up categorizations of the product relative to its configuration. But more importantly, the issue associated with standards and compliance with standards and certification to standards is being dealt with, has been alluded by local governments. New York City, as John pointed out, is leading the charge in terms of mandating that any electric bike sold within the city has certain certifications tested by a nationally recognized testing laboratory before it can be sold. Well, that's fine for New York City. Well, what about Los Angeles? What about Chicago? What about wherever? There is currently, most people don't realize it, but there is currently a federal standard for bicycle safety. From a specification standpoint, it was promulgated in 1976, so it's old and antiquated, and it certainly didn't address electrical bicycles when it was originally drafted. It has been modified to recognize e-bikes, but it doesn't set any specific criteria for structure or performance or safety features, etc. CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, is the federal agency that's charged with protecting the safety of consumers, and they are paying attention. They've noted the issues in New York City. They've noted the issues with lithium-ion batteries, not only for micromobility applications, but for cell phones and computers, all the way on up to electric vehicles. And they're currently, they were going to be charged with a mandate based on the pending legislation and the government relative to funding the government. There was a section of laws that would have gone into effect had it passed, that mandated that within 16 months of the president signing this bill, that they would have to issue revised regulations for lithium-ion batteries and e-bikes in particular. As I say, they are paying attention, and we're quite confident that in spite of the setback that happened this week, there will be federal standards and that will be promulgated that will specify safety requirements via, in all likelihood, the UL standards 2849 and 2271 and 72 for the battery packs. They will be coming down the pipe, and we need to keep in mind that when they are promulgated, federal regulations of this nature are preemptive, which means they become the law of the land. So, but until that happens, manufacturers and distributors, such as the people that I work with and represent, are faced with a plethora of different requirements relative to how to build these bikes. Now, prudent manufacturers right now, knowing that this is coming down the pipe, are configuring their bikes to be compliant with the UL requirements. They're working with testing and certification labs such as SGS to preempt, if you will, issues associated with this once those rules become law. But until such time, it's as you describe, a hodgepodge, and it's confusing for both consumers and it's confusing for manufacturers and distributors.
Thanks, Mike. And just a reminder, we're talking about e-bikes and e-safety today with our expert guests. And I'm going to come to you now, Bobby. We heard that here in the Toronto area, where I'm from, they recently banned e-bikes on the subway in the wintertime because of a fire that happened last year, almost a year ago, around I think it was New Year's Day or thereabouts. What is the main concern from a fire safety point of view when it comes to regulation, Bobby? What's the one key message that you'd like to share with those who are putting in place policies, especially when it comes to the fire safety point of view?
Well, again, I guess using New York as an example, and I know we mentioned it earlier in the cast here, New York City, I think, became one of the first states, or I should say New York City itself, about enacting rules that basically that the batteries themselves must be certified. And they got to show proof that the batteries were tested at an accredited laboratory. This is just the beginning of, I think, where the country's going, and at some point, hopefully globally, this is where it's going to be going as well. You know, there's a lot of things that we're learning about batteries, that the fact of the manufacturing of them, that hopefully that they're being done correctly the way they should. There comes the usage of it, that they're being used properly, and we're finding out now that that environmental conditions are playing a major role now with batteries based on where you're located. High humidity, snow, cold, heat, things like that. So these are things that we're learning too. Actual maintenance, what people are using to charge these batteries. We're finding that a lot of people are using the wrong type of charges, which are causing batteries to go into runaway and overcharge, things of that nature. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong here that appears to be the case, you know, based on investigations in various cities. So again, safety first. And if you're not sure, you shouldn't be approaching it. And if you don't have the proper PPE, there's a lot of things that we're learning that are available to people out there: suppression blankets, sand, dirt, a lot of different things that can be used to smother these fires if you come across them. But keep in mind, these fires burn for many hours, and depending on the day, I mean, the size of the battery, it could be days before they smother themselves. So it's not over when it first happens. It could be a long time.
Thanks, Bobby. And a reminder to our audience, if you have any questions, now is the time to get them into the chat. And while we're waiting, I want to ask if our expert guests have anything else they'd like to share. Mike, let's start with you. I know you've talked about the role that SGS plays in all this. I wonder if you could share a bit more on that front.
Sure. Well, I'm here representing the National Bicycle Dealers Association, NBDA. NBDA is a client of Human Powered Solutions, and they're our biggest and longest term client. We participate with NBDA in their effort to educate both bike dealers and bike consumers, e-bike and e-bike dealers and consumers, relative to the potential hazards associated with this power supply. I like to draw the analogy between lithium-ion batteries and gasoline. Gasoline is even more energy dense than are these lithium-ion battery packs, which means that if that energy is released in an uncontrolled fashion, bad things can happen. Okay, but we've managed to tame gasoline. Over the years, we've become aware of the hazards associated with gasoline, so we're careful with it. Auto manufacturers go to great lengths to make sure that the gas in a car is stored safely and preserved in the event of an accident, things of that nature. We will get there with these lithium-ion batteries. There will be technological solutions to these issues, these flammability issues. I have every confidence. There's a lot of things going on in the battery industry itself from a chemical composition standpoint, et cetera. But in the meantime, the best tool that we have to safely utilize this energy supply is education. And education in the sense that people understand how to use them. It's been alluded, use the right charger. One of the things that I harp on constantly is never charge a battery pack unattended. Always be there so that in the event something transpires, you're in a position to intervene. And usually the best intervention is to evacuate because, as Bobby's mentioned, these fires generate some significant toxic gases that are very harmful to the human body. But the point is we've undertaken a pretty aggressive program to raise awareness. How do you properly charge? How do you store these battery packs? What do you do in the event that it's been compromised, if it's been dropped and dented or immersed in water? All of which are realities that can negatively impact the stability and the safety of those battery packs. So that's been our primary function, if you will, in conjunction with NBDA. We put on seminars, we put on webinars, we speak to the industry, we publish newsletters. I've authored several guides that we offer to consumers and dealers alike relative to how to safely deal with this. Lithium-ion battery technology is wonderful. I mean, it's enabling us to address climate change by eliminating fossil fuels in mobility applications. This is one of the best technologies that's ever been designed, but it comes with drawbacks. And once we're cognizant of these drawbacks and we're appreciative of them and we know how to deal with them, this is a fabulous tool and a fabulous technology in support of humanity. So that's basically our thrust now, as we wait for the technological enhancements that will render these things safe without a lot of extra consideration.
We have a question from one of our guests. One of our participants is asking online. Enoch is asking, he's basically saying e-bikes is the future and soon the present. Well done to all engineers making this happen. But my question is, are there going to be changes to the processes and procedures of it if a state or country laws say otherwise? John, do you want to try and take that question?
Yes. I mean, these are meant to be fun. This is meant to be fun. This is, if you get on an e-bike, it's meant to be enjoyable. And there are regulations, there are standards in place to make these safe. So get out there, enjoy riding your e-bikes. As we're all aging, they allow us to bike a lot longer, a lot further. In the extreme heats, like in Georgia, without sweating so much. Just look and make sure that the bike's certified. The standards exist. They exist in the US, they exist in Europe, they're everywhere. Make sure your bike is certified. Make sure you're inspecting it. I mean, they're not going to be new forever. You got to take a look at it and get your regular maintenance and get out there and enjoy all these new trails that are popping up everywhere, greenways everywhere. They're so much fun. Just get out there. It's great.
John, can you just remind us of the certification numbers, the letters and that people should be looking for, both with respect to the bikes and the batteries that SGS is testing and certifying for?
Yes. So when you get a NRTL, Nationally Recognized Laboratory certification on your e-bike, the standard that you're going to be certified to is the ANSI Canada UL 2849 standard. That means it's harmonized in US and Canada, and it's an ANSI standard. It's UL 2849. And the same for the battery pack. It's UL 2271, harmonized in US and Canada. And SGS provides certification to these standards.
Thank you, John. And thank you to Mike, and thank you to Bobby as well. We have guests joining us from Brazil, from Angola, from all over the world. I see a very relevant and very important topic for a more sustainable world. I'm from Bahia in Brazil, is Maradi. So thank you for all of you for joining us. We've unfortunately run out of time and we're going to have to stop things here, but I'd like to thank my expert guests today, John Salige and Bobby Brown from SGS, Mike Fritz from Human Powered Solutions in the United States. I hope you found this discussion around e-bikes as informative as I have, and I hope you stay safe out there. If you'd like more information about the work that SGS is doing specifically to test and certify e-bikes, you can contact John Salige directly at the email address shown on the screen. I'm Teddy Katz. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
Bye.